Welcome to Wisconsin in Focus. I'm Bruce Walker, Great Lakes Regional Editor for the Center Square. And with me is Benjamin Yount, the Center Square's Wisconsin correspondent. We're here to talk a little bit about a plan to allow armed individuals in Wisconsin schools. Ben, you wrote a story on this. I'm going to let you take it away.
Right now in Wisconsin, you can't carry a concealed gun into a school. Teachers can't do it. Principals can't do it. Parents can't do it. You're supposed to leave it locked in the glove box in the school parking lot, but you're not allowed to have a gun. The only person who's allowed to have a gun inside a school is a sworn police officer or an armed guard. This plan from Waukesha Republican Scott Allen would change that. It would allow schools to decide if they want to let their school employees, and that could be anybody from a teacher to an administrator to the janitor, have a gun while in school. And it is touched on that just raw nerve of school shootings and how best to protect kids. Remember, it wasn't but, 2 weeks ago that there was a school shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. And Allen made the point that schools are soft targets. And as great as police are at responding as quick as they get to the school, as we have seen the tactical change that they now come in with the rifles ready to shoot, you've still got 2, 3, 5 minutes between the time that something happens and someone gets there. And Allen said this is not a perfect solution, but it is a solution. And it's something that allows local schools to make the decisions for themselves. He said he understood that Milwaukee, Madison, communities like that aren't going to want to do this, but you have smaller communities, more conservative communities, more rural communities, and they at least, as he says, should have the option to make this decision on their own.
I find the whole topic extremely distressing just because there are school shootings and there are individuals that would go into a school and do that. I'm not saying I know what the answer is because I certainly don't. I grew up in a rural community where many of my classmates were hunters and their families were hunters, and they would give us 3 days off of school at the beginning of deer hunting season and what have you. But I'm just wondering, what are the pros and cons in this situation? I mean, how does Representative Allen structure his argument on this?
The base is that this is not a statewide solution for every school. And that could be a pro, that could be a con. But the way that he puts it is this gives each school district the ability to make the choice for themselves. And that means if your community doesn't support this, then it's never going to be an issue. If your community does support this, then at least there is an option. And you're exactly right. Nobody has a solution for this. If this was, you don't get to drive with your pet goat on your lap, which I saw pass as legislation in the state of Illinois, they would have done this. Legislatures are really good at doing the easy things. How do you solve school shootings is one of the most difficult questions that we as a nation face. And Allen goes back to the idea of people who go to schools see all manners of signs that say this is a gun-free zone. And the bad guys who wish to do people harm know that. They know that if they go to a school, most likely you're not going to, as long as there's no police officer, you're not going to bump into anybody who actually has a gun tucked under the desk. In fact, Allen says that this plan came to him from the Germantown School Board. Germantown's another Wow County community, who wrote that gun-free zone signs do nothing but notify a criminal that there will be few, if any, people in the building that can defend themselves. And that's what Allen is seeing this as, not as an idea that you're going to have some sort of armed teacher patrolling the hallways, but that if something were to go wrong, there would be a way to deal with it, almost like a fire extinguisher. You have a fire extinguisher not because you're planning on burning your kitchen down, but if something goes wrong, there has to be something better than turning on the faucet and trying to spray it with that little spray nozzle. This is a very, 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 very contentious. I don't say controversial. I don't like that because if you agree with it politically, it's not controversial. If you disagree with it politically, it becomes controversial. Contentious is the word because there are just some people who don't want more guns in schools. And there are some people who see guns no differently than any other tool and say, look, if it's a tool that can protect the children, why not have this conversation? Now, Governor Evers, I think you can guess where he is on this plan.
Let me read the quote in your story from the governor. He says, Wisconsinites have been desperately demanding common sense proposals that will reduce gun violence and keep our kids, our schools, and our communities safe. This bill is not among them. This bill shouldn't make it to my desk, but if it does, I'll veto it. Plain and simple. I already vetoed Republicans' bill to allow loaded guns on school grounds because increasing firearms on school grounds won't make our schools or our kids safer. So let me be clear. I'll veto any bill that weakens Wisconsin's gun-free school zone law, period. End quote. Yeah, contentious, I think, is one of it's a great word to describe this whole situation. And in the meantime, we will have to contend with tragedies and crises. Hopefully not in Wisconsin, hopefully not any place else. But it's not a question of if, it's a question of when it's going to happen again.
This is one of these human stories that as a reporter, so many times there is one side, another side, Republicans, Democrats, liberals, conservatives, rural, urban, suburban versus the rest of the state. There's so many, point, counterpoint perspective. It is a human reaction to find this all tragic. Part of this, and you read the quote from the governor, and you got to remember that part of this, there is a split between schools in Milwaukee and Madison, some in Green Bay, Racine, Kenosha, some of the more urban and liberal areas of the state that don't want even police officers in their schools because they fear that that is going to somehow traumatize children. The idea of a teacher carrying a gun or having a gun tucked away in the desk, that is an absolute non-starter in those communities. And those are the communities, by the way, if you want to make this a political thing, voted for the governor in droves. So, yeah, this may pass the Assembly, may pass the Senate, but it is dead on arrival the instant that it gets to the governor's desk.
Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. I'm Bruce Walker, Great Lakes Regional Editor for The Center Square. Please subscribe, and thank you for listening.